Good afternoon. This is Rebecca Martin from the NASH Taking Student Success to Scale Network. I just want to check on the folks in Hawaii since I know you have your mics on. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great. Okay. So I'm very pleased to welcome you to this webinar. We, as indicated on this slide, we are going to be holding questions until the end of the webinar, but we don't want you to lose those ideas. So when you think of a question as you're listening to one of our presenters, please scroll to the bottom of the screen and select the chat function and type in your question. We will keep track of those and come back to those questions when we get to the end of the presentations. We are recording this webinar and we will distribute the link to all of you by the end of this week, as well as put it up onto the NASH TS3 website so you can refer others to it if you want to. So I think you all know that NASH now, we're 3 years into our work together across a network of 22 systems in taking student success to scale. We have been these are the systems that are in the network, and we've got some great work going on. We have a convening coming up in April. We hope that you're planning to join us then. What we're going to do today is a little bit different. Instead of focusing on one of the 3 interventions that we've selected for our collective impact work, we're going to highlight the work in 3 of our campuses. We're very excited that APLU's Project Degree Completion Award this year went to one of our lead campuses, the University of Hawaii at Manoa. We have 2 campuses that were also finalists, the University of Texas at Austin and Colorado State University. All 3 of these campuses have very exciting efforts, very comprehensive efforts, I would say, in progress in their student success arena, and they're seeing great results. So we're going to take some time today to hear from these 3 campuses, and we will start with Ron Canberra and Debbie Halbert from the University of Hawaii at Manoa.
Thank you.
Aloha. It's my privilege this morning to...
I can hear them too, or I would be interpreting what they were.
That we have been doing here at the University of Hawaii.
Probably introducing themselves.
Can you advance our slide?
System?
So I guess I need to just ask everybody, if you are not presenting, could you please mute your microphone?
I could just move this on the screen. I could.
On your screen, you have a microphone. Could you please mute it? We'll go back to the presentation.
Because it's right here.
I don't think his speakers are working, Rebecca, and so he's not hearing us.
Ron is not hearing us?
We can hear you.
We can hear you.
Okay, you can go ahead and present now, Ron.
Okay.
Thank you.
The University of Hawaii at Manoa was founded in 1907. We moved to our current location at the mouth of the Manoa Valley in 1912. We're about 1.5 miles from one of the most beautiful beaches in the entire world in Waikiki. We're about a 20,000 student campus. About 3/4 of it are undergraduates. Roughly 65% of our student body is from the state of Hawaii, and the other 35% are international and come from all over the country. We are a land grant, sea grant, space grant institution, a Research One institution, Carnegie One institution of the 10 campus University of Hawaii system. What you see on our slide are some of our graduation ceremonies and our School of Hawaiian Knowledge. Back in 2005, we started the process of accreditation with the Western schools and colleges, and at that point, one of the initiatives or one of the areas that we concentrated on is undergraduate education. Can we get to the next slide? We put together a list of programs that we felt were necessary to change our movement, our assistance to undergraduates. And here you see the list of things that were done. Preceding this, in 2003, we brought together all of the academic advising offices on our campus into a council of academic advisors to help us review academic policies that were hindrance to graduation. In 2007, we built our own degree audit system, which we call STAR. STAR was first a report system, and now it's become much more than that. It's become a major player in some of the initiatives we've put in place. In 2007, we started our first-year program, which was a Learning Communities program. We also created a Student Success Center in one of our undergraduate libraries. We initiated a Do It in 4 program, which was based on 4-year academic program sheets for each and every one of our majors on campus, which were incorporated into our degree audit system, which gives us the ability for students to not only know exactly what else they need to take in their program, but also to predict what they're going to take the next semester. We started a course pressure points analysis in 2011, which gives us a pretty clear idea of exactly what student demand looks like on our campus. We can almost predict when we're going to close courses, so we have a pretty good idea of tracking everything that is occurring on our campus. In 2008, we instituted our mandatory academic advising report, which now is spread throughout the entire campus. Let me show you some of the results of our work. The next slide, please. Back in 2010, our 4-year graduation rate was about 17%. In 2017, which reflects the cohort that came in 2013, our graduation rates have almost doubled. Our 4-year graduation rates have almost doubled to over 34%. And we anticipate that to continue to grow without much difficulty. Our 5-year graduation, 6-year graduation, and 8-year graduation rates have also improved. And we think that this is a direct result of several things. One, students being much more actively engaged in the process. Secondly, having direct information on their degree audit system that gives them a very clear idea of what they need to take and which sequence they need to take courses, depending on their academic major. We also created a new advising office called Exploratory, which really helps students that are undeclared to start looking at an academic major. Debbie will talk a little bit more about our specific initiatives that we're working through right now. So turn it over to Debbie.
Thanks, Ron. And I should also mention that Ron's been instrumental in all of these initiatives since their inception, and there are many more than the ones we listed. We just tried to do a highlight of the most significant that we thought were most likely to have contributed to our success in terms of our 4-year graduation rate. What we're doing now is building on those successes and trying to determine how we can, one, both improve our graduation rates even further, but also improve our first-year retention rate. So this first graphic you see, your guided pathway to graduation, is a new layer of what STAR can do. One of the things that we were concerned with is, of course, like many, that the classes available for students are available, but that they can also take an efficient path to graduation and not take unnecessary credits. So one of the things that's now built into STAR, which is both a registration mechanism as well as a way of looking at the different courses, is a way of determining if the classes that you're registering for are the ones that you need for graduation. And this is already in its pilot year had some significant impacts on the number of extra credits that students take that are not directly resulting in their graduation rates. Can you go to the next slide real quick? So this is a graphic of how the GPS registration system has changed our on-track credits that students take. Now when they go to register through STAR, they'll be given a prompt that says this will most likely help you towards graduation or this one won't. And so it's taken the number of off-track credits from a 22% down to, or the national average, down to 7.6% at Manoa. And so we're still working with the details of the system. We're trying to figure out how both to include choice for students in terms of the general education requirements, but also make sure that what they're taking takes them through the most efficient way to graduation. Can you go to the next slide, please? I wanted to talk a little bit about our first year retention rates. You'll notice that those have also begun to improve in the 2016-2017 year. A couple years ago, we started a committee on campus called the Student Graduation I'm already blanking on student,
Surge.
the Surge Committee,
Surge Committee.
which is about engagement, graduation, and retention. And we meet weekly now to think about ways in which we can help improve both our graduation rates and retention rates on campus. The committee is combined of me, myself, I'm the Associate Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs, Ron, who is undergraduate, the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Undergraduate Education, and our enrollment management team, as well as our Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs, and a variety of others. And so with that team, we've prioritized a variety of actions that we think are necessary to continue to improve both our graduation and our retention rates. Some of those things that we did last year include looking at ways of leveraging our scholarship funds for retention and graduation rates. We've also looked at ways of enhancing the student experience. Specifically, we've created what we're calling a Hanai host program. In Hawaii, to Hanai somebody is to informally adopt them, and it has a lot of other dimensions to that meaning as well. So as a pilot this year, we have reached out to some of our incoming students, and we've provided them with a Hanai family who serves as an informal liaison here on the islands. This first pilot year was just open for students who came from off island, so either one of the outer islands or the US mainland, but we're hoping to open up the program to all of our incoming students as we begin to develop a core of volunteers that can help. So we have started to see improvements in our first year graduation rates as well, and we're hoping to see some more of that as we continue to move forward. Our last slide. So this is the Hokulea. For those of you who have not followed the Hokulea's journey around the world, it is a Hawaiian sailing vessel that is sailing around the world based upon ancient navigational principles that have been reclaimed from our Native Hawaiian past, and also sort of point us towards where we think we can go to the future, which is both combining the cultural heritage of the place where we are with the scientific knowledge necessary to move forward. In terms of our graduation and retention rates, we are still actively working on identifying new ways that we can continue to improve these. One of the areas we're looking at for next year is an early alert system, developing an early alert system that will help us get the students connected with their advisors and with the departments in a way across the campus that we currently don't have the capacity to do. And I'll turn this back over to Ron in case he has any final comments to make about our next steps, and otherwise we'll be done.
One last observation that we have waited for a long time to sense a culture change on our campus and a commitment to undergraduate education. And this last year, we really sensed that. A great number of the colleges on campus and the deans on campus have committed themselves to being much more actively participating in both the week before activities on campus and in welcoming new majors to each of their colleges. That sense of culture and sense of ownership we hadn't seen on our campus for a very long period of time. So I think the increased graduation rates, the increased emphasis on undergraduate success on our campus has really started to become part of our culture on campus. So it's very exciting right now.
Thanks, and we'll turn it over to the next folks to present.
Okay, congratulations to Ron and Debbie and all your colleagues at Manoa. We're really excited that you get the national recognition that you deserve. So now we'll go to the University of Texas at Austin, hear from Carolyn Connerat. Carolyn?
Hi, how are you all today? I'm very excited to be here to present and talk about the work we've done at the University of Texas at Austin. I want to echo some of the work that Hawaii was done, and I would say our starting place is really about culture change, that is really so important to make the kind of major improvements in retention and graduation rates that all three of our universities are talking about today. Next slide, please. We started in this process in 2012. The president established a new goal for us to increase our graduation rates from, we had been around 52% to reach 70% by 2017. You can see in this slide that we've made good progress, that we hit almost 66%, and we're on track to get to that 70% in 2018. Next slide. What's interesting for us, and I think what was most rewarding, is the fact that we really were able to get those gains by closing the gap between the students that were in the bottom quartile compared to the top quartile, using SAT scores as a measurement there. So when we started, we had about a 26-point gap between our graduation rates for students that were in the bottom quartile compared to the top. And you can see we've cut that in half now to only a 12.6% gap for those students. And then next slide. Even, I was going to say, more exciting for us was the fact that we really are starting to see the growth in students that might not, that a lot of universities, I think that we look at the closing that gap, as we call it, the jump that we've seen for our African American students, Hispanic students, our Pell Grant eligible students, and our first gen students has really been the part that I think that we really are most excited about in the work that we've done and where we're seeing that closing the gaps. So the question is, how do we do it? Next slide. Our strategy really for improving graduation rates starts with freshmen first. When we began this process in 2012, 2013, we said that, you know, we could do a lot of different programs, and we were doing things across campus, but we said we really needed to make sure that you start with a particular cohort. And for us, that was that incoming freshman in 2013, to say you have to start with one group if you're going to see a huge jump in your graduation rates. Next slide. And that begins with, for us, was predictive analytics. And we said we need to be able to know who are the students that you're going to be able to really help to be able to make a difference. And so we created a predictive analytics model that we've created ourselves based on the data we had, which for us was our admissions files. And so every student, when they're admitted, we took all of the data that comes to us through that application process and ran a regression model to say which were the factors that really made a difference on who graduates in 4 years. We developed a model so that every student that's admitted is assigned a predicted percent of the chance that they will graduate in 4 years. We then take that group and we say we're going to make sure then that all the students that were least likely to succeed would get support and have an effort. So next slide. So that, what we said, we have about 8,000 incoming freshmen. We have 40,000 undergraduates here at UT. So about 8,000 incoming freshmen. And so we said we would look at the bottom 2,000 students and make sure that all of them were assigned to a particular student success programs. These are based in the colleges. So natural sciences has one, liberal arts has one, et cetera, each one of those programs. And those programs range in size depending upon the college from about 100 students, 75 students, up to all the way up to 500 students. And we developed what we called our best practices, and we shared that among bringing all of the directors of all of these programs together. We meet with those directors every 2 weeks. I meet with those directors of those programs, and everyone is making sure that we have these best practices. They're getting supplemental instruction, they're getting specific advising, they're getting peer mentoring and community. And we all know from the research how important that sense of belonging and community is, and especially for this group of students that's coming in, was that sense that they were part of a group that was similar to them and that everyone was on the same page. Go to the next slide, please. And part of that also for us, it was really interesting, was to make sure that all students in that freshman group are placed in some kind of a small community. So we called it 360 Connections. When we started in 2012, we had about 7,200 incoming freshmen, and we said we wanted every freshman to be in a small community of 20 students. That's how we came up with the 360. We've grown, so we're more than 360 programs. But when we started, we also said there's no way for us to build that many new programs from scratch. So we looked around campus and really realized there were already a lot of small communities, whether that was honors programs, whether that was first-year interest groups. But the idea with the 360 Connections was to make sure that every student felt like they were assigned to and part of a small group community. And all of those communities, then there's no sense for a student, if you're in a success program that's providing supplemental instruction, that you're different than an honors program, because everyone is assigned to a community. And that also is to help build that sense of belonging and welcoming for our students when they came to campus. Next slide. We also did, and I think this was really important for us, at UT Austin, there was never a culture of you have to graduate in 4 years. There was always, you come to Austin, it's a wonderful place, probably like Colorado and Hawaii, where students want to stay for a long time. And so part of this was we needed to change that culture from the day they arrived, really before they even come. So now our branded, as we call them, our class of campaigns, every single class has a logo and has a campaign, and that starts when they become prospective students. These logos are used. It took us a while to build buy-in across campus, but now everyone uses them, from housing, from the colleges to you name it. They put this little logo on them. When the students arrive, they get a t-shirt that has their logo on it, so that those students know, like the prospective students today who will arrive in 18, they're part of Texas 22. And so building that cohort, really an orientation as well, to say that you are part of a group that will graduate in 4 years, was a huge part of this. So it's not just making sure you're giving the student support, but making sure that the students buy in to say, I want to be part of that community. I want to graduate with the friends that I arrived at. You know, it's one of those things that I think when we did first our research and we looked at this, was that across the country, if you look at the small privates that have amazing four-year grad rates, this is something that they do from day one. You go to Dartmouth or somewhere like that, and from day one, you know you're going to graduate in 4 years. So changing that on our campus was a big part of it. And the logos also helped to change it for faculty, for staff, for others, to have that awareness and buy-in that students wanted to be part of this four-year culture. Next slide. After that first year, we said, what's the next thing that we need to do? And we said we need to be able to make sure that we can track our students from as they progress, to make sure we know if they're on track to graduate or not. We still have a mainframe legacy system, so we've built all of these tools ourselves. Our progress to degree, working with the registrar's office, we have an interactive degree audit, so students know if the hours they're taking count towards their degree plan. Every semester, we run that audit, and we run that audit for campus so that we can send that data back to the advisors to say these students are on track to graduate and these students are off track, and which students are more likely to continue to be off track. We run it, we have a post-matriculation model that we use based on the classes that students take and the grades that they take. So if you get a C in calculus, but you came in with a really great predicted when you started, your score is probably going to go down a little bit of predicted as far as whether you're on pace or off pace or not. If you get an A in calculus, it's probably going to go up based on what your degree plan is. So it's really an early warning system, and it really was something that for us was being able to send out to the colleges and to the advisors to say, here's an easy tool for you to be able to identify your students, to be able to know who you need to reach out to, since they all, of course, have large caseloads. Next slide, please. The next thing we did, which was, again, the next year, if you think of this as progressing, when we started with our freshman cohort, then we added something else for the next year, but continued for the next round of freshmen. And the sort of third big thing was this graduation help desk. What we found was that there were students who were doing well, that were our retention rate was, for the third year students, maybe in the 70%, even upper 70s for them to be here, but they weren't graduating. And so what were the things that were the roadblocks, the administrative roadblocks keeping students from graduating? And that could be something as simple as a class that's canceled in that last spring semester that a college didn't realize the implications for the 20 students that were in that class that would have to wait until the next fall. So by creating a centralized what we call graduation help desk, and it's sort of it's an online version of it. So students email us and say, I need to get this class, or I need to get a waiver for a particular class, and I've worked with my advisor and I haven't been able to get it, or the section has 60 students and they won't allow me to sit in it. How do I get into it? By having that at the provost office level, the graduation help desk is able to investigate those and then work with the colleges and the faculty and chairs to be able to say, these are students that need to graduate. What can we do together to figure out how do we resolve this problem? Since we started this about 2.5 years ago, we've had over 1,200 students cases that we've resolved that have been able to graduate on time that wouldn't have if we hadn't had a central way to be able to resolve this. And the graduation help desk is now being replicated by UT System for all of the other system schools. It's something that there's part of their Quantum Leap for Student Success. They're taking this idea that we have, and we're working with those other system schools to implement this at the other campuses. Next slide. This is sort of, I would say, is one of our signature programs. So if you look at that of what we were doing for all of our students, one of the things that we really realize, and that research shows, of course, is that students that are lowest income and that have to work off campus, have a job, are least likely to graduate on time. And so we wanted to set up a way to provide scholarships for those students that would help them, and so, but would also be a way that would be more than just handing them a scholarship in August and in January. So what we've created is what we call an incentive-based scholarship. Next slide. This is called the University Leadership Network. And so what we do is we took that $5,000 a year scholarship, and the scholarship is financial aid. So we're redirecting financial aid into a scholarship, and we're dividing it into monthly payments. We're providing the students with a leadership training, professional development. We're also giving them internships in years 2, 3, and 4. But what's most important is they have to fulfill program requirements every month of attending these classes, meeting with peer mentors in order to get their $500 scholarship each month. And so it's building in new skills that they might not have had otherwise. Next slide. University Leadership Networks is 500 students each year. They are majority first generation, low income. When my first cohort came in 2013, that group had a 33% predicted 4-year graduation rate. Next slide. And we're very excited to say 55% of them graduated in 4 years. And I really love the fact that 20% of them are still enrolled here at UT and are on track to graduate in 5 or 6 years. So I think it really shows the importance of really changing it, of not just building the community, but changing how we look at financial aid, how we look at working with students. And part of this is the, building marketable skills, helping them to move forward. Of the cohort that graduated, some of these students that, as I said, it's like 75, 80% of first generation there. 75% are either Hispanic, African American. These students that graduated have gone on to graduate school at Harvard, at Berkeley. They're working at Google. They're working at KPMG. I mean, it's really a wonderful success story about building that and giving them that incentive-based scholarship. Next slide. And I would say that this is just really sort of our whole overall tying it together, is that we really felt like we changed the institutional message and focused across campus on the fact that every student should graduate, and really making it from the leadership to the students, and then working with faculty and staff to kind of make that culture change happen. Last slide. Thank you. That's it. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Carolyn. So we're going to now turn to Colorado State University in Fort Collins. We need to make a change here, so just bear with us for a minute while we switch computers. Remember that we are going to go to question and answer at the end of Paul Thayer's presentation from Colorado. And here he comes. So use your chat function, start getting your questions teed up now so that we can go straight into Q&A when Paul finishes. Paul?
Well, good morning, or at least it's morning here in Colorado. Glad to be with you, my colleagues from Hawaii, from Texas, and everyone on the call. We're all in the same business together. Colorado State University is Colorado's land-grant university. We're Carnegie One institution with about 28,000 resident instruction students. When we began our work about 10 years ago on what we call the Student Success Initiatives, we had a distinctive challenge. We were, at that point, already outperforming the predicted graduation levels. And so the challenge for us was how to elevate the quality and character of educational experiences in ways that would change completion outcomes for students, and at the same time, change the institution and the university for the long term. So we went about that, as you might imagine, originally with a report, and that report surfaced lots of data, lots of research, made multiple recommendations, and adopted 2 large goals. The first was to get to 70% six-year graduation from what was then about 63%. And the second was to eliminate graduation gaps for students of color, accounting for prior preparation. We also at that time adopted some foundational principles, and those have really served us well. The first is that engagement in learning across the curriculum and co-curriculum is the primary issue. Learning is primary, and if we do that well, increased success rates will follow. Another was that, like you, we found that there was no silver bullet. We needed a comprehensive array of strategies that collectively would make a difference for students. We needed to be in this for the long term. We knew that change was not going to happen if it was to be permanent unless we had a long-term and sustained effort. We recognized that diversity was important to consider at every stage of what we did, from the conception of a strategy to implementation to assessment. And lastly, we knew that we needed to be exceptionally data informed. So then we went about implementing activities that we thought would make a difference for students in response to the recommendations in the report. And here are some of those. And they cover a wide range, thinking about how students begin to think about and how they begin to prepare for a college or university education, how we configure financial aid and other ways of it being possible for people to attend. We paid lots of attention to the critical transition experience and lots of attention too to academic experiences, both in the curriculum, course redesign, for example, and also in the academic support area. So, for example, building our Institute for Learning and Teaching, a learning center that emphasizes learning for faculty as well as for students. So we were implementing activities that made a difference for students, but doing so in ways that would produce long-term, sustainable structural and cultural change. Now, no way that in the time available we can go through all those activities, but I'd like to highlight 4 as examples, something that will illustrate the things that we were trying to do. One is what we'll call student engagement and learning programs. So in that Institute for Learning and Teaching, we created a whole number of learning programs, started at about 3,000 instances of student participation, moved all the way up to 23,000 and growing. So in these ways, we were changing the culture of student engagement and learning effectiveness. Now, we were also wanting to engage students in what we've called across the country high impact activities. One of those is undergraduate research, or what we called mentored research in artistry. So we more than doubled, nearly tripled the rate at which students were participating in undergraduate research in artistry. But equally as significant, and as shown in this graph, when we started, the likelihood of students of color participating in those experiences was less than half of the rate of other students. Today, it's literally reversed. Now, students of color are actually more likely to be participating in undergraduate research in artistry than other students. So we were about the business of changing student engagement in active and experiential learning in high-impact activities. Another example is what we've called the key communities, which is a structured first-year experience for about 600 to 650 new students each year, with an emphasis on the involvement of first-generation students, low-income students, students of color, and students who have lower levels of academic preparation, available to all students, but large proportions of underrepresented students. It's a first-year experience. The exceptional thing is that when we compare students who participate with similar students who don't participate, we see that the graduation difference is extraordinary, 10 percentage points on average, greater graduation rate than those who don't participate. But it varies. For those students who are more traditional, who don't have many of the characteristics often associated with risk, they benefit as well, 2 percentage point gain in graduation. For students at the other end of the spectrum, students with an accumulation of factors such as first generation and low income and of color and lower levels of prior academic preparation, turns out that they graduate at rates up to 44% greater than similar students who don't participate. So we've been changing graduation outcomes from students from underserved and underrepresented backgrounds. And my last example would be what we did with academic advising, which had been very transactional and diffused on the campus. We wanted to create a brand new paradigm. We did that by creating a new position that we called Academic Support Coordinator, with a new position description that focused on holistic, data-informed, and proactive means of advising. We've deployed 70 of those across the campus, and we've anchored them within the academic departments, wanting them to be effective in being a part of department culture and a part of change in department culture. And we've offered them new technological tools that improve efficiency and help them along the path towards strategic outreach and intervention. So we've changed the paradigm for academic guidance, and we've made it a truly educational and strategic function. Now the question is, would any of this really make a difference? And fortunately, it has. So for example, when we look at our four-year graduation rates, and you see the trajectory here, we started in fall of '07, and over this period of time, we've experienced an 8 percentage point gain in four-year graduation. But you remember that our goal was a 70% six-year graduation. So when we look at the path of towards six-year graduation, we see that we are indeed are positioned to reach 70% for the class that entered in fall 12, graduating by the end of summer 2018. So we met one of our goals, the 70% six-year graduation goal. The second goal was equity in graduation for students of color, accounting for prior preparation. What you see on this graph is along the y-axis, the rate of return to the third fall, and across the x-axis is a proxy measure that we have for academic preparedness. This pair of gold lines show a distance between them, with students of color being the solid line, students not of color being the dotted line, and the distance between them is a measure of inequity. And it's a significant inequity, with students of color returning to the third year at far lower rates. Now, the blue lines are nearly coincident, so we've achieved equity by that measure. And in this case, the dotted line, you remember, is students not of color. The solid line is students of color. So we've literally reversed with, to the extent that there is a difference, students of color are actually persisting at a higher rate than others. So we're positioned to eliminate graduation gaps for students of color as well. Now, at the same time as we've experienced these outcomes, this has been important as well. Since we began in fall '07, we have literally doubled the proportion of students of color on the campus, literally doubled the proportion, and we've increased the proportion of low-income students by about 40%. So we've increased compositional diversity over this period of time, and that, I think, helps to make the case that we all believe in, that we can achieve positive success outcomes and diversity at the same time. Now, we said from the beginning that we wanted this to be lasting, have a lasting effect on structure and culture. So we tried to think in this way. We wanted to think about strategies that would make an impact on students, but we also, at the same time, wanted to think about what the promise was for any particular strategy to have an impact on the institution. So we had a preference then for strategies that would maximize both. And that also affected our choices on where we wanted to place particular strategies and activities, and also how we wanted to promote visibility and shared activity. We've learned a lot over this whole period of time. Some of the things that we would want to share, one is that the analysis of fit, thinking about where we're starting and where we want to get to, and who are going to be the key players, what are going to be the natural incentives and the incentives that we can create, has been very important. The second thing is that we've discovered that articulating a central, coherent, and coordinated and consistent message has been absolutely important. And that message needed to first emphasize the quality of learning, and second, quality is measured by equity. That narrative has been absolutely critical. We've also discovered and wanted to prove that the use of data could be so important, both by producing strategic insight, but also for communication, to help people believe in the progress that we were making, to believe that the things that we were doing to change the environment and influence students were indeed producing real change on the campus. We built collaborations that were really exceptional. The partnership between academic and student affairs was deep, it was profound, it was substantive. And since then, we've built other collaborations as well. Generating and sustaining a culture of change was an objective, but of course we couldn't simply declare cultural change. What we recognized is that cultural change would come about through shared activity. So we tried to reduce barriers for people doing the right thing, doing the things that we knew would contribute to student success, and incentivize those things accordingly. And lastly, building coalitions, identifying different people who for different reasons could come together around a common goal. We didn't try and change their perspective necessarily, though oftentimes it changed along the way. But those coalitions were the things that allowed us to move forward with many, many different constituencies involved. Now, having achieved those original goals, we've adopted new one. Now we're headed towards a goal of 80% graduation and absolute elimination of graduation gaps for first-generation students, students of color, and low-income students. Great to have this opportunity to share with you, and looking forward to the conversation to follow. Thank you.
Okay, so now, Paul, there we go. Here's our question slide. So I got a couple of questions here from people already, but if you have a question, please add it to the chat function or raise your hand. The chat function, I think, it will be a little easier for us to manage, so we'd encourage you to use that. So let's start out. We have a couple of questions for Carolyn at UT Austin about the graduation help desk. How was it communicated to students so that they knew the resource was available to them? And was it really only for tracked at-risk students, or is it for everybody, since many students run into roadblocks even if they might not be flagged as at risk?
We communicated it. I'm going to answer it the other way first. We started with the seniors or rising juniors, and we communicated it through emails to them, and then also through lots of meetings with advisors and going to the Advisors Association meetings and presenting about it. We have a website where it is a landing. If you Google UT Austin Graduation Help Desk, you'll come to our page. It's pretty simple. We have a ticket system so the students can submit an email. We find that for most students that come to us, they've already done the runaround. They've talked to an advisor, they've talked to financial aid, they've talked to somewhere else. And so when they come to us, it's usually a pretty complicated. It's not a tier one-stop sort of question that can be answered. So it may take us up to 24, 48 hours or longer to resolve it before we get back to them. But we communicated it through social media platforms, through emails to students, as I said, through advisors. We started with the juniors and seniors, and then that has expanded so that now we started having our help desk team show up at orientation when students were registering, freshmen coming in, or transfer students, and helping them to resolve it. And now it's open to all students. And recently was the first time this happened. The provost sent an email out to all students about, we had an ice day, we were closed, and said if you had issues that were caused because of it, contact the help desk. And that was the first time that they had sent that out to all 50,000 students, including graduates. And we were kind of packed that first week with all kinds of different questions, but overall we thought that was great to get that kind of support from above and really push it out there. It's up, and I would say it's cyclical in that there's much more busy during registration season, of course, than at other times of the year.
Okay, great. So here's a question that Carlene Van Sandy from Wisconsin asked, but I had written it down too. You all mentioned culture change. Could you talk about what the primary changes in culture that you've observed have been?
I think the prevailing discussion on the campus has changed entirely. If we go back to an earlier point in time, most often the questions that were raised about student success had to do with the quality of students, as people would express it. What are students bringing in? And that was the issue. These days, the discussion has changed entirely. It is all about what are the environments that we can produce that are going to bring out the best in students. So it expresses a value on our role in teaching and creating in the environment and our partnership with students and bringing about the best in them. And I would say it's happened in three ways. One is by having a clear narrative about what constitutes learning and success. A second has to do with data, constructing discussions around data that help people see issues as problems to be solved. And the third is, as I mentioned, shared activity, putting people together across boundaries with different perspectives, but working on a common goal. And it's in that interaction that people have in those shared activities that seems to produce the really deep cultural change.
We've seen that kind of culture change. The other area that we have seen a real change in is when we started putting together the 4-year academic plans to allow students to have a much clearer idea of progress to degree. There were a number of those academic plans that faculty looked at and said, wait a minute, that isn't exactly what we thought was in our requirements for graduation. And so for a while there, we had a catalog that wasn't truly reflective of exactly what the faculty, and as an outcome of that, as the faculty sat down and started to really look at a student coming through and going through a 4-year program, there was a great number of curriculum changes that took place. Courses that had been taught by Professor so-and-so that had moved on or retired needed to be replaced with. And so we went through about 3 years, starting in about 2008 till about 2011, in which faculty were spending a lot of time looking at what they were telling students were their requirements for graduation. And that was very helpful on campus. And I think that started a consciousness about their commitment and what they need to put on the table to help students make progress to degree.
And I would add, I agree with everything everyone said. The other thing for us was that I think that it's really important. You have to have leadership at the top. You have to have a president, provost, who says that this is important and this is important to the institution. So if it's starting there, you have to have that culture from the top that says, yes, this is important, the work you're doing. And I would say that the slowest group for culture change for us has been faculty. We still have faculty who say, why do they need to graduate in 4 years? That, you know, they should be able to explore and take as long as they want to. And I often say it's not about 100% goal, but it is about making it possible for students to graduate in 4 years that want to be able to, and especially so students don't have to take on more debt. I think that economic argument to say this is about helping our students to be able to complete a degree and move on with their lives and not have to stay longer in order to incur more debt. And that helped, I think, in many ways for advisors and others to kind of change that culture to say that this isn't about preventing students from exploring, it's about helping students to achieve what they want to achieve.
Okay, Paul, here's a question for you about academic support coordinators that are housed in the departments. Are these advisors? Are they peer mentors? How does that work?
They are professional advisors with a brand new position description. And in order to be called an academic success coordinator, the department has to endorse that the position description that has all of those ingredients that we think are important to creating this educational function of advising. In our case, we decided it was important to place those people in the departments. That may not be true for other campuses, but our choice was to maximize the possibility that the new ASCs, as we call them for short, would be a part of the department culture. They would be in a position to bring in new perspectives to faculty at the department level, to be a part of the curriculum discussion on the in the department, and to have influence there. So it was a risk to have it less centralized. On the other hand, what we do to be sure that there's coordination is we convene that group periodically and monthly, and we reinforce the role, provide data, plan together to coordinate some of our outreach activities. So we think we have a nice balance of a decentralized system and a centralized system.
Okay. Carolyn, a couple questions here about the leadership incentive-based scholarships. Are these tied to one leadership program or multiple programs? Do students apply? Is there a website where we can find out more about it?
Yes. This is actually, they do not apply. Students would like to apply. This is where we come in and we start with our predictive analytics of our students likely to succeed at UT. I take my bottom quartile, my 2,000 students that have sort of the least likely that I know I need support. And from that group, I select and I assign those that have the most financial need. So we take the students who are least likely to succeed and have the most financial need, and we send them a letter that says, congratulations, you've been selected for the University Leadership Network. It is one program and only one. We started with some one-time scholarship funds just to see if this would work, and when the results were so good, then we were able to work with financial aid to say, these students are all getting Pell Grant anyway, they're all getting some state aid, they were going to get some financial aid from the university, and to be able to make it a full 5,000 on top of that was sort of the jump that we did, and to say that of that additional 5,000 that they could only get it through doing the program and work. And if you go to UT Austin and University Leadership Network, we have a full website on it, and feel free to also email me if you have any questions.
Great. So I'm going to volunteer the rest of the speakers here to respond to email questions if any of you have them. If you need their contact information, let me know. I'll be happy to share it with you. And I hope you all get inundated with questions, because I think these are just great programs, real advances. And I think that, there's several things I'd like to just point out that span across all three of these. They're focused on equity. They're focused on closing the equity gaps, which is such a high priority for all of our institutions in the TS3 network. And they're taking it to scale. They are reaching large numbers of students. These are not boutique programs. These are not in little pockets in places of the institution. They're really spanning the institution itself. And finally, they're being institutionalized. They're being embedded into the culture, into the way these campuses are approaching their work and seeing where they can be successful. So I think that you can all join me in recognizing the important progress that these three campuses are making. I think that they're all deserving of the national recognition that they've received from APLU. We're glad to join with APLU in recognizing all of them. Congratulations to all of you. And thank you to the rest of you for joining us today. I think this was a very good conversation. And somebody just wrote in, yes, very inspiring work, seriously great work. So thank you all. And hope to see you all in April.
Great.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.